Hello everyone, I'm Ruby Larkspur. Welcome to the garden. And you're listening to the Sunlit Blossoms PODFIC. If you're listening on my Patreon, I thank you for your pledges. If you're listening on my YouTube channel or Tumblr blog, then I appreciate the support. If you want early access to this PODFIC, I'll be posting a new chapter every month on my Patreon, with full public access coming later in the month. As always, I do not own Demon Slayer or its characters. All rights go to Koyoharu Gotoge and Ufotable as the mangaka and animation studio, respectively. Sunlit Blossoms, Chapter 4, Harsh Realities. Promises are made, and Nezuko learns firsthand why Tanjiro is the exception and not the rule. Before we continue on our journey tonight, I need you to promise me something. Nezuko turned to Rengoku as he spoke, pulling her focus away from Tanjiro for a moment. What is it? She asked while Tanjiro nuzzled her with a few muffled grunts. At least he was actually doing something rather than staring blankly into space. Nezuko would take it, even if Tanjiro's mental state was closer to that of a toddler than the teenager he was at the moment. In the event your brother eats a human, I need you to promise that you will decapitate him, Rengoku told her, his usual smile replaced with a much more serious expression. Not only that, but once the deed is done, you must promise to commit seppuku to atone. But Nezuko cut herself off as Rengoku raised his hand as a signal for her to wait in her protests. I am certain that you will do everything in your power to ensure that it never happens, he explained. But if he assaults a human, many members of the Corps, including my fellow Hashira, will see the blood of an innocent human as being on your hands as well as your brother's, and your word will not be enough to convince them that his life is one worth sparing. You must be willing to stake your life on this claim. As should I. You don't mean... Nezuko trailed off, the weight of the situation becoming apparent. Yes, if, and only if, Tanjiro assaults a human, then I'll commit seppuku as well. I have decided your brother is worth sparing because he refused to harm you. I must also be prepared to take on the consequences if lives are lost due to that decision, Rengoku replied. So, do you accept such a responsibility, Commodore Nezuko? I do, Nezuko answered, straightening up and facing the Demon Slayer with a determined expression. I will do everything I can to make sure Tanjiro keeps his humanity, but if he loses that humanity, then I will decapitate him and then slit open my own stomach. You have my word. Very well, Rengoku responded, his jovial smile once again in place. Nezuko was still pretty sure he hadn't blinked since they met. She was distracted from her future mentor by Tanjiro flopping so he was across her lap. He looked up at her, and Nezuko couldn't help smiling. She could tell that Tanjiro was smiling back, humming happily while he reached up and patted Nezuko's head. I'm going to get some rest, Nezuko muttered, curling up against the wall of the cave they were in and closing her eyes. Before she drifted off, something warm curled up beside her. Is there any way we could travel during the day? Nezuko asked. They had been traveling for a few days, always traveling during the night and sleeping in whatever shelter they could find during the day. At least Nezuko slept. Rengoku stated that demons didn't need sleep and explained that demon slayers didn't need as much sleep as civilians due to their training. But Nezuko had also noticed Tanjiro sleeping next to her a couple times when they weren't on the move. If we can cover up your brother and completely ensure the sun will not touch him, then we could travel during the day, Rengoku replied. Nezuko nodded before turning to Tanjiro. Stay with Rengoku, okay? She whispered. I'll be back soon, she added before leaving the cave. They had passed by a rice paddy field before finding the cave they were in. Maybe she could buy a basket off of them. Can I help you, young lady? The farmer asked. Nezuko looked around, finding just what she was looking for. A broken basket was cheap, and she could buy supplies to fix it. Could I buy that basket off you? And some straw and bamboo? She requested, pointing to the basket in question. Don't bother with payment. The basket has a hole in it. Take as much straw and bamboo as you need, the farmer replied. I can't just take it. Let me at least pay you a little for the straw and bamboo. Nezuko protested, not giving the farmer a chance to respond before grabbing his hand and slapping some coins into it. She was raised to not squander good offers when they were made, but she was also raised to repay people for their goods and services. After settling that, she grabbed the basket and other supplies and made her way back to the cave they were resting in. Ah, there you are, Rengoku exclaimed. Where's Tanjiro? Nezuko asked, looking into the cave when she couldn't find her brother. He didn't try to follow me, did he? Please tell me he didn't. He did, but that idea was quickly shut down. As if on cue, Tanjiro popped out of the hole beside Rengoku. He glared at the cave opening as if it had personally offended him. He attempted to follow you, but he returned to the shade and dug a hole when he got burned. Nothing severe, but enough to remind him he is no longer capable of being under the sun, Rengoku added while Nezuko crawled into the cave to pat her brother's head. Tanjiro hummed contentedly at the affection, and Nezuko pulled in her supplies. Well, hopefully we can travel during the day once I fix this up, she said before getting to work, mending the hole in the basket before reinforcing it with the bamboo once it was cut into strips. Once she was done, she showed it to the boys with an excited smile. Ta-da! Impressive craftsmanship, Rengoku replied while Tanjiro climbed out of the hole he had dug. Do you think you can fit inside? Nezuko asked her brother. I may have underestimated how big it needed to be, she realized before Tanjiro dropped into the basket. With how his arms and legs hung comically out of the basket, Nezuko had to suppress a snort. Ha ha ha! I don't think that's going to work, young demon, Rengoku stated with a laugh. I forgot how much we've grown up, I guess, Nezuko admitted with a sad smile. It seems like only yesterday we were just little kids, she added before she remembered the first day of this fiasco. That's it! She exclaimed before turning to Tanjiro. You remember the other day, Tanjiro, when you got bigger? Do you think you could do the opposite and get smaller? She asked, gesturing to demonstrate her request. Tanjiro tilted his head to the side, then closed his eyes. After a moment, he vanished into his Haori, his head popping out of the shrunken material seconds later. He had shrunken down to the size of a toddler. Excellent work, Rengoku declared. Well done, Tanjiro, Nezuko giggled, patting Tanjiro's head. He leaned into her hand, and Nezuko could tell he was smiling behind the muzzle. Now we just need to cover you up, and we'll be good to go. I'll let you out during the night if you want to get out and stretch your legs, she added before pulling her own Haori off her shoulders. Tanjiro's only response was curling up and snuggling into his Haori, seemingly falling asleep while Nezuko covered him up. She couldn't help smiling at the adorable sight before she draped the dark fabric of her Haori over her brother. After that, she wrapped the basket up in a sheet she had grabbed, tying it up to keep it secure. Smart thinking, layering materials to keep the sun out, Rengoku told her. I don't want to take any more chances than I have to, so I'm going to take lots of precautions, Nezuko replied as she hoisted the basket onto her shoulders. There we go, she whispered before carefully exiting the cave. Nothing indicated Tanjiro was burning. There was no smell of burning flesh or any pained cries, and she sighed in relief that her idea worked. Once Rengoku got out of the cave, they began walking again. Nezuko couldn't deny that she felt just a little safer traveling under the sun's rays. As the last rays of the sun disappeared below the horizon, Tanjiro started getting restless. Nezuko giggled while she set the basket down and pulled away the sheet. All right, Tanjiro, you can be outside now, Nezuko said as she lifted her brother out of the basket, setting him down on the ground and letting him return to normal size before they began walking again. Nezuko smiled when she felt Tanjiro's hand carefully grab onto hers. It is truly extraordinary that your brother is able to resist his hunger, Rengoku told her. Before him, I had never met a demon that resisted their new urges. That takes quite the resolve. He's always been stubborn, Nezuko replied. But Tanjiro is also the kindest and most selfless person I know. No matter what, he's always put others before himself, especially those he cares about, she added with a solemn smile. Then I hope to meet the human version of Kamado Tanjiro, should you succeed in your mission, Rengoku said as the group passed by a temple. Nezuko was about to reply when a faint chill raced up her spine. She almost ignored it and walked away, but Tanjiro didn't move with her. She turned to him, wondering what was wrong. He was staring at the temple, up the mountain with wide eyes. Tanjiro? Nezuko gently called out, not getting any sort of reply. She could see Rengoku's smile faltering out of the corner of her eye, but her focus was on her brother. Tanjiro, what's wrong? She asked, only for Tanjiro to let go of her hand and bolt up the stairs leading to the temple. Tanjiro, wait! Nezuko called out as she raced to catch up. She barely heard Rengoku calling out to her as she ran up the steps. He could smell blood. Lots of blood. Not to mention the non-human scent. Not exactly like the man who killed their family, but similar. It has to be another demon, Tanjiro thought, not even bothering to slide the door open before headbutting the doors off their tracks. He gazed into the building while Nezuko caught up. She was saying something, but he couldn't make out what it was. All he could see was the blood and bodies. His new demon instincts were begging him to surrender and eat. He was still hungry, having starved himself just to make sure he didn't harm the only family he had left. The unfortunate side effects of that starvation were rearing up now, but he couldn't break Nezuko's promise. Tanjiro forced himself to stay put, digging the new claws into his palms as they began bleeding, and biting as hard as he could into the muzzle without cracking it. He forced himself not to do anything, until he heard Nezuko screaming for help. Tanjiro, you can't go running off like... Nezuko cut herself off with a horrified gasp. The demon in the temple was hunched over multiple dead bodies, clearly eating. What are you doing here, brats? This is my turf, the demon snarled as it turned around to face its siblings. Nezuko tensed up, bringing her hand closer to the axe and slowly pulling it away from her obi before removing the cover. She spared a glance at Tanjiro, and was concerned to see his focus was entirely on the pile of bodies. Drool was pouring out from under the muzzle, and Nezuko was now a little thankful that it was in place. It was probably one of the only things keeping Tanjiro from devouring the dead bodies right then and there. Not good, Nezuko thought as the demon stood up from his meal. The two of you human? It asked, not giving Nezuko a chance to respond before lunging for her, sending them both flying out the doorway. They're so fast! No wonder I couldn't keep up with Tanjiro until he stopped! Nezuko thought as she swung the axe at the demon's neck. Blood spilled from the wound, but he didn't seem bothered by it. Nezuko turned slightly to the left, finding Rengoku looking from her to Tanjiro. Her brother was still standing in the doorway, like he was oblivious to what was happening behind him. Kyojuro followed the siblings, finding the doors broken right off their tracks. The demon, clearly responsible for an attack of innocent civilians with the blood on his face with any indication, had just attacked Nezuko. On the other hand, Tanjiro was standing in the doorway, stiff as a board aside from his trembling hands. There was blood dripping off the boy's clenched fists, and saliva was dripping off his chin, and Kyojuro could hear his labored breathing. This is bad, Kyojuro thought as the second demon jumped back, blood gushing from its neck. His priority was protecting living civilians. He'd deal with the aggressive demon, then handle Tanjiro. Not bad, the demon chuckled. But that won't do much. I can already feel it healing, it added as the blood stopped gushing from its neck. Nezuko raised the axe as the demon leapt, only for flames to slice through the demon's neck and separate its head from its body. As the body began crumbling to ashes, Rengoku turned to Nezuko. Oh, thank goodness! Nezuko sighed when the head started crumbling away. She turned to footsteps to find Tanjiro running towards her. Mm-hmm! Tanjiro grabbed onto Nezuko, pulling her away from the disintegrating demon. Nezuko stumbled back, unable to take her eyes off the demon as it turned to ashes. One of you is a demon? Why are you traveling with a human, much less a demon slayer? The demon demanded. Did you hit your head or something, you idiot? Humans are food! You wasted a perfectly good... The demon was cut off by Tanjiro kicking it into a tree. Tanjiro! Nezuko exclaimed as the last of the demon's head and body crumbled away. Tanjiro growled at where the demon had landed, then turned back to her. He rejected the corpses, Kyojuro noted as he watched the Kamado siblings. Tanjiro had begun examining Nezuko, likely searching for injuries. Just moments ago, the demon boy had been completely focused on the corpses and drooling profusely, but now... I'm okay, Nezuko whispered. Tanjiro responded with a tight embrace. Kyojuro couldn't see the boy's face, but his body language had said it all. Tanjiro was glad his sister was okay. The flame Hashira turned to the horizon, where the sky had started to brighten with the coming dawn. We should get you inside, little demon. Kyojuro spoke up, getting the siblings' attention. Nezuko turned to the horizon, her eyes widening as she spotted the first signs of sunrise, then turned back to Tanjiro. Come on, she said quietly, guiding Tanjiro inside. Kyojuro thought back to the previous morning, how Tanjiro had tried to follow Nezuko out of the cave and got burnt by the sun. How odd that the scene was more concerned for a human life than his own safety. The boy hadn't even expressed the demon's usual instinctive fear of sunlight until he got burned, and now he had also rejected a perfect source of food despite his starved state. I hope I made the right choice, Kyojuro thought, watching Nezuko usher her brother into the basket. Tanjiro didn't take his eyes off Nezuko, even with their proximity to the corpses. He didn't even drill at the scent of blood this time. It's okay, Tanjiro, Nezuko told the demon as she patted his head with a soft smile. Tanjiro hummed behind his muzzle, leaning into the touch. That was when it clicked for Kyojuro. He's holding on for his sister, he realized. Nezuko, the only human survivor of the slaughter of their family, and Tanjiro's younger sister. Tanjiro had risked himself to protect her when Kyojuro knocked her out. He'd wanted to stay close to his sister. Her being in danger had pulled his attention away from the corpses to rush to her defense. Tanjiro held on to his humanity because he had someone he wanted to protect with his life after the siblings both lost everything. The epiphany left the flame Hashira curious. Would he do the same as these siblings had done had he and Senjuro been in their position? Would he, too, have fought for his younger sibling, regardless of if one of them had become a man-eating demon? It was a question Kyojuro doubted he could answer. The question he could answer, however, he did so confidently. His choice to spare Kamado Tanjiro had been the right one, and he would support Nezuko in her endeavor to cure her brother. We should clean up before we continue, he told Nezuko. She nodded, draping her haori over Tanjiro's head. Stay here, okay? She told him before following Rengoku. I hear many demon slayers struggle the first time they go against a demon, Rengoku said as they began to dig out another set of graves. It is nothing to be ashamed of. Right, Nezuko muttered. The digging continued in silence for a while, long enough for the sun to fully rise to start the day. I've never had to fight before, she admitted. Neither had Tanjiro. Fighting was never really necessary for us. The times that sort of thing had been necessary had been before their father passed away, as far as Nezuko remembered. He had handled it. Even the bear. 10 days before he died, their father had been the one to kill it while Tanjiro watched and later told her and their siblings. Am I cut out for this? She wondered aloud, unable to stop herself. For work as a demon slayer? Rengoku asked, pausing in his digging. They were nearly done anyways. With enough training, yes, you will strengthen with time. You need to simply remind yourself why you fight and set your heart ablaze. What do you mean? Nezuko asked, standing to go and retrieve the bodies. I will tell you once your official training starts, Rengoku replied. Nezuko nodded, then turned back to the temple. She was really starting to hate having to bury so many people because of demons. Once the bodies were buried, and Nezuko had the basket carrying Tanjiro on her back again, their journey resumed. Once they were back on the path, Rengoku took off in a sprint. Nezuko tried to keep up, but she was only able to keep him in sight. And that was while running as fast as she could, gasping for breath and stumbling every once in a while. "I'm sorry, Tanjiro. You must be getting tossed around a lot in there," Nezuko thought as the basket holding her brother bounced against her back. "I know you probably insist you're okay, but I still feel bad about putting you through this," she added, letting a memory briefly come to the surface. "Are you sure you're all right? You gave so much to everyone else." Nezuko sighed as she sat beside Tanjiro. "Next time I go to pick vegetables, I'll give you some before meeting up with everyone else. You need to have more food, especially with how hard you're always working." "It's okay, Nezuko," Tanjiro countered. "You don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine. Besides, you 5 Mom will always be my top priority. If that means eating a little less so you all have something, I'm okay with that. You always put the rest of us before yourself, big brother." Despite her body's protests, Nezuko pushed herself to go faster. "Now it's time for me to return the favor. No matter what it takes, I will make sure you become human again." And thank you for tuning in to this chapter of the Sunlit Blossoms PODFIC. If you enjoyed and want early access to this PODFIC, you can become a member on my Patreon. Any adult support would be greatly appreciated. Now for this month's Taisho Era Secret. Tanjiro has always been protective of his younger siblings. Even insulting them carried the risk of receiving one of his headbutts if he was around. Hurting them practically guaranteed you'd be in big trouble and left without backup. With that, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for listening, and farewell!